Good day, folks. In this one, we're going to be adding some additional code to our game. We're going to be creating health pickups. We're going to be coding those pickups, and we're going to be refining some things with the Ruby script. So let's get to it. Okay, so the first thing is we want to grab what we're going to add to our game. We're going to use one of the existing assets. So go ahead. It's going to be in the art folder under sprites and then VFX. We're going to be heading it so that these this item here will be what we set as our collectible. Okay, so let's go ahead and just click and drag it, and that's going to add a sprite to a game object. We want to make one adjustment though. Let's go ahead to that collectible here in the browser, and we're going to set it so that the pixels per unit is going to be 256. Why 256? Because that's the sort of size of the object. So let's set that to 256, and then click on apply. Okay, so that should be. Does that look about like 1 unit? Is that about 1 unit? Let me just turn on the grid here a second. Yeah, that's 1 unit. Yep. Okay, cool. Just making sure. Okay, so we are going to add a box collider to this. So let's say box collider 2D. Now we don't want it so that like that it's a physical object. Instead, this is going to be a pickup. So this is going to be something that when the character goes over the strawberry, it's going to be it's going to increase the health. So we don't want this to be like something where you run into it and it stops you. So we're going to set that is trigger. Okay, and then let's also go to the collider and just make sure it makes sense as far as. I'm going to just shrink it just a tiny bit. There we go. Good. Okay. Whoop. No, not tiling. We want is trigger because we want something to happen when the character goes over it. Okay. So now, that's the easy part. Let's go ahead and we're going to now do some coding. So let's go ahead to our scripts folder and we're going to make a new script. So go to scripts, do a right click, say create, and then we'll say C# script. We're going to call this health collectible. All right. It's going to be health collectible. Okay, you see where it is right there? I think I can zoom in. Healthcollectible.cs. I'm not sure if that came across. I just zoomed into with my screen, so I'm not sure if that comes across with the stuff I'm using to capture. Okay, while we're here, let's go ahead to health collectible, and then we're going to just click and drag this to. Will it let me do that? Yes, good. Okay, so I clicked and dragged health collectible script to the collectible health object. That added it as a component. Okay, so now let's actually code this thing. All right, again, I'm going to use VS Code. You can certainly just use Notepad. I just think there's some nice. The highlighting helps as well as some of the autofill. Okay, get out of here, friend. Okay, we're going to get rid of the start and update functions because we only want something to happen when it's triggered. So we're going to trigger. Going to get triggered, folks. Okay, so we're going to get rid of everything between basically the brackets for the class. Okay? Alrighty, so we are going to go ahead and we had set that this is a trigger object. So let's go ahead and say like when this object is triggered, we're going to do something. So the way we do that, we say void because we're not going to return something. On trigger enter 2D. Okay. Notice that D is capitalized and the T and the E, okay? And we're going to say here, collider 2D other. Okay, what is happening here? Void we know, meaning like it doesn't return something. On trigger, enter 2D. Remember we had that box collider and then collider 2D other. So what's going to happen is that when something enters the box collider for our health pickup, it's going to say, so when that happens, this function is going to be called, and then collider other. Other, this is going to be the sort of placeholder or formal parameter for that other object that's going to enter. examples of other objects, game objects that will enter the health collectible, be the player character, or it could be an enemy, or something, some other sort of entity. But what's going to happen is that this function is going to accept a different object, another object's box collider itself as a kind of parameter, and then we're going to have some code that's going to handle that. Okay, so on trigger 2D collider enter. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and then also just say, we're going to just, for now, just so that we can keep track of things, we're going to debug this. Debug, capital D, debug dot log object that entered the trigger. Okay, note where those quotes are, and then plus other. Now what this does is it says basically, hey, the terminal is going to print out if something enters, if the box collider of another game object enters the box collider of our health pickup, it's going to, wherever the other is, that other object is going to print out on the terminal. This will be sort of interesting when it comes to like Ruby, as far as, or like sort of troubleshooting different things. Okay, all right, so let's keep on trucking then. Okay, all right, we are now going to actually process like some actual like what we want our code to do. All right, so we are now going to start off with an if statement. So this is going to be logic that's going to basically analyze the type of that's going to analyze what the other game object is, what the other game object's collider is. So let's go ahead, we're going to say if controller does not equal null. All right, so this is a lot to handle for someone that might be a new coder. And also I want to add a open bracket and then a close bracket, okay? So it's saying if, when another box check to see if another object collider is there. All right. So this here, this exclamation point equal sign is basically a not, and null is the basically absence. So it's saying it check to see is the other controller of the other object, is there a controller there? So like if you sense the presence of another box collider, do the following, okay? All right, and we're gonna say here, controller dot change health 1. Destroy game object. We're also going to add one line here where we're going to be basically saying if if specifically with Ruby and the player character, Ruby controller, am I spelling that? Yep, equals other dot get component Ruby controller. Okay, so that code there, Ruby controller. So controller is a type, is sort of a variable type or an object type, is going to be set to whatever the other is, and we're specifically looking for what's called a Ruby controller. So what this is doing here, with these two statements combined, it's basically checking to see is the other box collider in the health pickups box collider of the type Ruby. If that controller type is of Ruby, then we're good to go, and we're going to execute this code. Cool. This is so that if you have other objects that have box colliders moving around, how do you get it so that these items actually can like move around without picking up the health bars, or the health pickups, okay? The other thing we're gonna have to do, so let's save this, we're gonna have to revisit it in a bit. The one thing is we're saying here, we're referencing controller.changeHealth1. Change health is a function that we wrote in Ruby. Now, Ruby's function, change health, right now is what's called a private function. The only code that can touch that change health function is sort of code that's already within Ruby. We're going to need to adjust, just as we did with our public variables, max health and speed, we need to go ahead and make the change health function a public function so that other code, specifically health collectible, will be able to work with her code. All right, so let's go ahead to Ruby. All right, so I'm going to open up, so you see there's the error. And I might have also missed a semicolon, it looks like. Well, we'll fix that then. Okay. While we're here, though, in Ruby, we want to go ahead and set it so that our Ruby is set to public. So we go ahead, where's change health? We just need to say public void change health. So that's in Ruby. We're adding the word public to change health. Okay. Now let's go back to health collectible and see what I missed. I'm going to save this. And also save this. Let's see what I missed here. Line 44. All right, I'm going to just pause this while I troubleshoot this. All right, so yes, I had two small errors with my code when I wrote this down. I forgot to define the beginning and ending of on trigger enter, as well as I had a slight typo in change health. So I'm going to just do that right now. All right, so with on trigger enter, we need to say, hey, this is where it begins. So we want to have an open bracket here, and then a close bracket after that if statement. All right. So we need to do that. The other problem I had was I did not capitalize the H in health. All right, now that should fix it. And yeah, it's because it says change health. Cool. And that's now public. Good. All right, so let's check to see if this works. Let's go ahead here. Good, good, good. Let's play. There we go. And we got our terminal there. Now, did we also see? Yes, as far as like what actually entered the thing. Good, excellent. Cool, all right, so what is next? We've got a few things. We're gonna be basically doing some things related to adjusting the, do we wanna make it so that the Ruby can't pick up a health pack if she doesn't need it, okay? So we go ahead here, let me stop playing the game. We need to make it so that if she needs health, she can get it, otherwise don't, all right? So let's go ahead then, and we're gonna have to do a couple things. We're gonna have to go back, we're gonna wanna open up Ruby controller and the health controller. So I'm gonna just go back here to my code. Let's start off with our health collectible, all right? So we are going to add an additional if statement, okay? So we want to make sure that we keep this if statement that checks to see, is Ruby the one that's in the same box collider? Is it Ruby's box collider that's colliding with my box collider? Cool. All right, the other thing we're going to need to do is we'll say if controller dot current health is less than controller dot max health. Okay, I'm gonna check my spelling. Controller spelled right, current health is lowercase, uppercase, controller dot max health. Good. All right, and then we need to add some brackets. Okay. So we're basically checking to see if the user has if the user tries to pick up health. Okay, if it's less than their max health, like if they have 3 hearts out of 5, cool. I'm gonna go ahead and pick up that item and increase my health. However, if I already have 5 out of 5 hit points, I don't want to pick up that health object because I don't need it. I'm already at my max health. So there's a couple of things that we could do. We could, I'm gonna go over to Ruby. So right now, our current health is what's called a private variable. The only person that can access, the only code that can access current health is stuff within the Ruby controller. So usually, we could just say public int current health, and that's fine, but we're gonna instead use what's called a property definition. This is going to be kind of like a function that's going to allow other other programs, sort of speak, like allow that to get access to the current health by calling it. Okay, so this is going to be sort of some weird, like kind of an odd kind of like syntax. So we're going to go here between max health and current health. Okay, gamers, I made a slight mistake when I recorded this video for the first time, so my apologies if this is a bit of like a shock. We're right now going to be sort of a shock in terms of the flow. So the function we're going to be writing here is, or not the function, the attribute we're going to be writing, our property we're going to be writing is going to be going to return the value of current health. So let's get this. I'm going to copy and paste it because the first time I wrote this, I actually had a bracket going the wrong way, and that broke it. So anyways, public int health, get, return current health. So I think earlier in the video I explained like we could just set current health to public, but we don't want to have that variable be editable by anything except Ruby. So what we did is we created what's called a property for this controller so that when it's asked for the current health, it'll give you that information. And now notice how it says get and not like set. This is going to be read only. So how do we plug this in then? So let's go over here to health collectible. And what we're going to be doing is, so this will be the other function you're writing. We're going to reference that new variable. So instead of current health, which is a private variable for Ruby, we're instead just going to say controller.health. And that will then be able to check to see, is this going to be something where the pickup would actually be beneficial to me. So let's go ahead and save these. Let's go back into Unity and make sure that we are all happy.